Hi everyone. Now we are going to discuss about a topic called chemical properties of soil. In the previous part we had gone with the physical properties of the soil, and in this video we are going to discuss about the chemical properties of the soil. So let's begin. So here are the few chemical characteristics or the properties of the soil that we are going to discuss. Number one is inorganic fraction of the soil. Number two is organic fraction of soil. The third one is cationic exchange capacity, simply called as CEC. And the fourth one is soil pH. And the fifth one is buffer action in soil. So let's begin all these things individually. The first one, inorganic fraction of soil. So as we know, the soil is going to be considered as a medium for plant growth, and the plants are going to derive their nutrients, either they may be of macronutrients or the micronutrients from this soil medium only. So out of all these things, the 8 inorganic chemical elements that comprise the majority of the mineral matter in the soils like nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, potassium, calcium, magnesium, etc. So in all of this, the oxygen is going to be the negatively charged ion, which we call it as anion in the crystal structures. And this oxygen is going to having the most common on both a weight and the that means what we call as a weight and as well as the volume basis. The next to the oxygen, we are going to possess all other silicon, aluminum, magnesium, calcium. So these are all going to be a positively charged, and we call them as a cations. And they are going to be in the decreasing manner. Okay, so as we move on, they are going to be decreased. And the ionic form, either it in the anionic or cationic form, these elements are going to combine in various ratios to form the different minerals. That means the oxygen can combine with the iron, or it can combine with the calcium, or the calcium can combine with the aluminum. Like that, they are going to be of having the various combinations to form the different minerals. And the soil is going to contain along with this thing some sort of other inorganic compounds also, like boron, copper, zinc, molybdenum, cobalt, iodine, fluorine, etc. And if we are going to observe according to the studies, we are going to have more than 80 other elements are also going to occur in the soil, that is in the earth crust, but they're all going to be found in a very smaller quantities. Coming to the organic fraction of soil, the organic fraction of soil may be 10% of the soil mass by weight, and it has a great influence on chemical characteristics of the soil. The most commonly chemically active organic fraction of soil consists of soil organic matter and the colloidal clays. That means any active organic fraction of a soil is going to possess the two main components. One is soil organic matter and another one is the colloidal clays. So first one is soil organic matter. It is going to be composed of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen and nitrogen, and the smaller quantities of sulfur and other elements are also present. And this organic fraction is going to serve as an essential nutrient for the plant growth. As we know that in the inorganic fraction we had seen that the minerals are going to be present and they are extracting, and those nutrients are coming from nothing but this organic matter decomposition. This soil, whatever the organic matter containing soil, is going to have the capacity of water holding, and then it is increasing the cationic exchange capacity to the soil. And not only that, the aggregation and the structure of the soil is also being enhanced by this soil organic matter. And the second part of this organic fraction of soil is the colloidal clay particles, and these are going to be very much suspended in water, and the size is going to be very small, of lesser than the 0.002 also. Okay, that means 0.002 mm of the soil size will be there. That is colloidal clay particle size. And these are going to exhibit a very large surface area per unit weight. These materials also generally exhibit a net negative charge and high adsorptive capacity. So colloidal particles are going to be classified into three mineralogical types depending upon their composition. They are going to be of kaolinite, then montmorillonite, and then illite. So these are the three colloidal particles, types of colloidal particles depending upon their mineralogical or minerals that are they are possessing. The first one is kaolinite. So kaolinite is going to be the one which possesses a crystalline structure composed of two layers or two unit layers. One is going to be of oxygen with silicon, and the oxygen is going to be tetrahedral sheet, and the other one is going to be the aluminum with the oxygen as a octahedral sheet. So that's how there are going to be the two layers that are present in the kaolinite, and there will be no gap between these two layers, and the aluminum and the silicon is going to be in the ratio 1:1. So altogether we are going to have here, if you see, the four-sided one, and there is going to be the eight-sided. Octa means eight-sided, and it is going to be the four-sided. And this is going to be a highly rigid structure where there will be no exchange of the cations is going to be occurring in this kaolinite structure. Then moving to the second type, montmorillonite structure, and it has a unit made of one layer of silica and oxygen tetrahedral, and another layer of aluminum and oxygen tetrahedral. So here you can see, for example, it is a illite structure. These two are having the similar in structure. So here is the tetrahedral sheet and octahedral sheet, and again you're having the tetrahedral, and here is a tetrahedral. So this is a structure of illite, but here instead of this things, these two, it is going to be of having both the silica with oxygen tetrahedral as well as the aluminum with the oxygen tetrahedral. So but the ratio of the aluminum and the silica is going to be of a 2:1 ratio. Okay, so that's the difference between these two, and there lies the exchange of cations in this montmorillonite structure. Then moving to the illite structure. So here in the illite structure, which is similar to this montmorillonite structure, but it does not expand when wet, but possesses ability to fix the potassium ions between the non-expanding plates. But here montmorillonite is not going to be of expanded when it is in the wet condition. So that's the difference between these two. But the ratio, structure, everything is going to be similar to this montmorillonite structure. So here is a picture. You can see this is the tetrahedral sheet, and this is going to be octahedral sheet, where is going to be kaolinite is going to be the two layers like this. Okay, and here you can see this is a non-expandable structure. And here you can see this is a illite structure where you are going to have the exchanging of the cations like potassiums. Okay, so this is just have a this is clay mineral sheets and mineral layers, and this is the mineral particles. Then moving to the ions. So before going into the cationic exchange and the anionic exchange, you must know what is an ion. So when rocks are broken down into the smaller and smaller particles, chemical elements are going to be released into the soil. And these chemicals or the minerals, some of these are going to be dissolved in the water, like this you can say, dissolved in the water that is present in the soil. And the chemicals that dissolve in the soil water splits into charged particles called as ions. So if they are going to have the positive charge, we call them as cations. For example, magnesium ions, potassium, like that. And if they are going to possess the negative charge, then we call them as anions. For example, nitrite, nitrate, all these things. And the plants are going to utilize these minerals that was being carried by the soil water, and they are going to be of useful in their metabolic activities. So here you can see, here is the one which is the nutrient that were holded by the soil particles, and these move into the soil water, and the soil water is going to be absorbed by the root regions. It may be root hairs or root caps or root tips, and from there it is going to enter into the plant root and the rest of the remaining parts. Okay, so that's how the mobility of these nutrients are moving from the soil into the plant through this soil water. So now let's see the first one, cationic exchange capacity. What is meant by cation exchange? First of all, we'll discuss what is meant by cation. The positive charge possessing the nutrients or the minerals are being called as cations, and how they are being exchanged. The cation exchange is the ability of a colloidal clay soil or clay particle and the soil organic matter to absorb and exchange cations with those in the soil solution. So what is meant by soil solution? It is nothing but the water in the pore spaces of the soil is called as soil solution. That means the cations are being exchanged between the soil solution and the soil particle is called as cation exchange. Then what is meant by cation exchange capacity? The capacity of the cation exchange measured per unit weight or unit of soil weight is going to be called as cation exchange capacity. So the capacity of the cation exchange measured per unit of soil weight is called as CEC. So cation exchange means the ability of the colloidal soils and the soil solution to exchange the cations is going to be called as cation exchange. And if we are measuring that cation exchange capacity per unit of solid weight, then we call it as CEC. So some of the plant nutrients and the metals are going to be positively charged ions or cations in the soil. Especially clay and the organic matter particles are mostly negatively charged anions and have the ability to hold the cations. So the clay particles as well as the organic matter, most of them are going to be negative charge. Because of possessing the negative charge, whatever the cations that are present in the water, they are going to hold them. So if they are going to hold them, so we can prevent the cations from being leached out or washed away. And the adsorbed whatever the cations are there, they are subjected to replacement by other cations in a rapid as well as a reversible process called as cation exchange. Then moving to the cation exchange capacity, its importance and the phenomena. The CEC of the soil is dependent on both the type of the silicate clays and the organic matter that is going to be present. The greater the clay and the organic matter, the greater will be the cation exchange capacity. So we are having the different types of CEC capacity, that is cationic exchange capacity, which is differing with the clay minerals and the organic matter. And the phenomena is going to be of very important in exchangeable cations are readily available for uptake by microorganisms as well as the plants, and the cations absorbed to the site of exchange show greater resistance to leaching or downward movement of soils with the water. And these are the two main important phenomena that are occurring because of this cationic exchange capacity. The calcium is going to be considered as a predominant exchangeable cation in the soils, even in acid as well as the weathering soils. But in highly weathering soils, we will find the aluminium going to be the dominant exchangeable cation. So we find the calcium, magnesium, sodium, and potassium cations that are going to be producing the alkaline reaction in water and termed as bases or basic cations. Whereas the cations of aluminium and hydrogen, that are protons, are going to be produced during the acid reaction in water and are going to be called as acidic cations. Okay, so this is what you have to just remember about the types of cations present in the concerned basic cations and the acidic cations. Then what is the importance of this cationic exchange capacity? So the cationic exchange capacity is going to be a very important mechanism in soils for retaining and supplying plant nutrients. So because it is going to resist the leaching capacity, so obviously the soil will be enhanced or enriched with the nutrients. Then the second one, it is going to absorbing the contaminants, and it plays a very important role in wastewater treatment in soils. Then, sandy soils with low CEC are generally unsuited for septic systems because of their little adsorptive ability, and there is a potential for groundwater. So, several scientists shown that the capacity of soil to exchange cations is going to be the best index of soil fertility. So, more the CEC capacity, more the soil fertility. Then moving to the second one, that is anionic exchange. So the soil rich in organic colloidals show anion exchange also. In this process, the negatively charged ions held by colloidals are replaced by OH minus, H2PO4 minus, then SO4 minus and NO3 minus. So these are all going to be considered as a negatively charged ions. Then the sulfate and nitrite are going to be not retained in the soil for longer period of time and hence not available for anionic exchange. But coming to the phosphate ions are going to be most important because they are going to be retained for longer time. So when we compare the two types of the soils, laterite soils and the black soils, the lateral soils are going to have the high adsorptive and fixation capacity for these phosphate ions than the black soils. Then what are the advantages of both the anionic and the cationic exchange capacities means these are going to be very important in the agriculture field, and as well as the soil scientists, that means several soil scientists shown that the capacity of the soil to exchange the cations is going to best index of soil fertility, and the predominance of desirable in the exchange complex brings about both good physical cations and favorably influences the microbial activities in the soil such as ammonification and nitrification. So the knowledge of about this cationic exchange and the anionic exchange is of great help in reclaiming the acidic and saline or alkaline soils. Then moving to the soil pH. So here we have discussed the soil pH in the physical properties also. This comes under the chemical properties also. So as we know, the soil pH refers to the negative logarithm of the activity of protons in the soil solution and indicates the acidity or alkalinity of the soil when measured in an aqueous solution or potassium chloride extract. And this soil pH is probably the most measured soil chemical property, and it is one of the more informative one also. That means knowing the pH of the soil gives us the more information about the nature, texture, all the properties of the soil. So, like the temperature of the human body, the soil pH also implies certain characteristics that might be associated with the soil. And in general, the pH of the soil range from 3 to 10. So, if the pH of the soil is 7, we call it as neutral. If it is greater than 7, we call it as alkaline. If the pH of the soil is lesser than the 7, we call it as acidic soils or acidic conditions of the soil. And the pH of the soil is also going to determine the mineral contents as well as the microbial composition in the soil. High pH releases ions like potassium, magnesium, calcium, manganese, copper, and aluminium by the weathering of the process of the soil, whereas the low pH favors the solubility of the salts, including carbonates, phosphates, and the sulfates. And what is the importance of the soil pH? The soil pH is going to influence the growth of the plants as it affects the quantity, activity, and the types of microorganisms life in the soils, which in turn influences the decomposition of crop residues, manures, sludges, and other organic materials. So it is even affecting the other nutrient transformations and the solubility of many essential nutrients, and the pH of the soil also determines how fast microbes in the soil break down the organic matter, which is going to work best at the pH range of 6 to 7. And fungi can work in more acidic conditions. So here is a picture, something showing of a soil pH, which is going to tell us if something is acidic or neutral or strongly alkaline. So the soil pH also affects the nutrients that are available to plants. So this diagram shows which nutrients are available at each pH level, and a way. So here you can see the wide band shows the nutrient is available for plants to use. a narrow band, here you are going to see the narrow band is showing that only tiny amounts of the nutrients are available at that pH. So you can imagine that at the strong acidic conditions, you are not going to have the much availability of the nutrients. Okay, so this is what you can see knowing by this diagram. Then moving to the buffer action in soil. So the buffer action is going to be the what we call as one of the most important resistance to the change pH of a system. So that also being possessed in the soil. So the buffer action, as I told you, refers to the resistance to change pH of a system, and the soil possesses good buffering capacity. For convenience, if a certain amount of acid is added to the distilled water, the resulting solution shows acidic property, and that will be the pH below 7. But if the same quantity of acid is added to a neutral solution, there would be a minor change in the pH. This property of soil to resist the change in the pH is called as buffer action. So the buffer action in soil is due to the presence of a large quantity of weak acids and their salts, and the phosphates, carbonates, bicarbonates, and other salts of weak inorganic acids, and the corresponding acids themselves, and the colloidals associated with cations act as an important buffering agents in the soils. However, the buffering action of the soil is going to what we call as protect the higher plants and microbial life from direct adverse and injurious effects of sudden change in the chemical reactions. The greater the buffer capacity of the soil, the larger the amount of the amendments. So what is these amendments means? Lime and the sulfur depositions, which is used to correct the acidity or alkalinity of the soil. So this is all about the buffer action in the soil. So with this, we have finished off all the chemical properties of the soils. In the next video, we will discuss about the biological properties of the soils in detail. Thank you.